So tell us a little bit background, just for people who may not be familiar. You know, they've probably seen the PayPal button, but they're probably not aware of the scale of what PayPal does. So maybe give us a little background first.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're still in the 10 years in, we're still in that growth phase, so which is amazing. It feels like our business is just getting hot now, so people are surprised how big we are. Let me start by asking maybe the audience, how many of you have PayPal accounts? Can you raise your hand? Okay, well, I'll be waiting at the door on your way out, and I'm going to sign everyone up. So good number of people. Today we have about 225 million accounts in that 10 years. We processed about $70 billion of transactions online directly on PayPal, and through our payment gateway, we processed another $70 billion. So in total, 140 billion, which is around 60% of all of e-commerce we see in some form or another. We have over 1 billion credit cards on file. We have hundreds of millions of bank accounts on file. We have a ton of data. We have, imagine the transaction data for 10 years worth of e-commerce at this scale, and we keep every one of those transactions. A lot of it to make sure that the person making the transaction is the right person. That's the business we're in. In many ways, we've enabled the long tail of e-commerce, and we've helped grow e-commerce to what it is today. So we're proud of what we've done so far, but it's still just the beginning.
One of the things that strikes me as a really interesting aspect of the PayPal story that a lot of people aren't aware of is that you began in the era when people were afraid to use their credit card online.
Absolutely.
So it was really a story about being a trusted intermediary.
Yeah.
So how did you establish trust? How did you, get in those early days of the internet, get people to say, "Oh, it's okay to give up this private data"?
I feel like a politics commercial. We did it the old-fashioned way. We earned it. So, you know, it's interesting because there's a lot of talk about privacy these days.
Yeah.
And the right data not getting into the wrong hands. And a lot of what we did in those early days was to solve for the earliest privacy problem of scale on the internet, which is sharing your credit card information. Right? 10 years ago, people were afraid to share their credit card. It's amazing to think about it that way, because today, on a daily basis, people share 7 million times a day their credit card. So we've kind of progressed in that sense, but we started in solving for that problem. We're in the business of knowing who you are and letting you share the right type of information with the right people at the right time. Right? That's how we started. And we did it by making sure that we were maniacal about security, maniacal about the consumer knowing exactly what's going on at any point in time, and providing compelling value. You want to buy from that site, but you're not really sure whether you should give your information. We said, well, we'll over time build this base of getting that information and passing it on to be processed, not necessarily to the person you're transacting with. We also got a little bit of luck. eBay was just booming at the time. It's the largest e-commerce provider in the world today, still, but it was in its early days, and there was a real problem to solve, which is you and I trying to do a transaction, you selling, me buying, how do I pay you? And so it was a necessity. So we got an extra oomph. But once we did good by it, people started signing up. People did more transactions.
So, a couple of things happen when you make a transaction. You obviously pass on the credit card information, but you also pass on other kinds of information. Information the consumer wants to have passed on.
Yeah.
I don't want to fill in my ship-to address again.
Yeah.
You guys already have it.
Well, and that's why I say we're in the business of providing the right information at the right time.
Right.
It's people look at us and they always assume, they give us the benefit of the doubt these days because of the work we did. Yeah. And we pass on a lot of information to merchants from consumers that they otherwise have to type in. And that's a huge value proposition. But at every point, the consumer gets to say yes or no. Yeah. And the value proposition is, do I have to retype it in?
Yeah.
And as we look to the future, there are a lot of additional examples of where we can fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
Where, devices are becoming quickly the way to access the internet. 3 or 4 years from now, it will be the non-PC devices, and keyboards are kind of getting thrown to the side, as you've seen. It's going to be a lot harder to convince people to retype information over and over again across the web.
So is that a lesson for government websites and government services?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Because we're still, I think, in the model where we have a form for that. Is a lot of people's experience of government. How do we start thinking about services like PayPal with respect? Now, I'm not just talking about PayPal. It could be anything else that does a similar thing with respect to government services. I mean, should I be able to pay for my passport fees with PayPal?
There's for all the progress we've made over the last 10 or 15 years of the internet, it's still nothing compared to where it should be. Even retail is only 5% done online. And that's going to start to move very quickly. We're already seeing it move very quickly. But it's amazing that a lot of the government services haven't moved online faster, especially since money's tight these days in a lot of governments, right? There's a few gaps that need to be filled. There's a few infrastructure gaps on the internet that haven't been filled yet. And one major one that we feel passionate about helping solve is what we're calling higher assurance identity, right? There's a few providers now, Facebook and Google, that are doing good identity work around sharing your friends or sharing some amount of information, but you really don't know that that's the person they say they are. And for a lot of government, healthcare, and other types of transactions, I need to know who that person is. And that means collaboration between people who have that type of information, people who don't. We happen to do that as a business. Right? We need to know that you are who you say you are, otherwise we lose money. Right? That's just our business. And it's not something we do up front, that we interrogate the registration process and then forget about it. We do that on every single transaction. We do more than 200 risk checks every time you do a transaction on PayPal. So we're in the business of proving who you are at every point. And so we've been approached, sometimes by government entities, sometimes in healthcare and a few other areas, where we're being asked to provide not just the payment transaction, which makes us money, but also that assurance piece, making sure that you are who you say you are.
So can you sort of expand on that idea of identity checks? Because that does seem like a critical function throughout many, many government agencies. You do that in close to real time.
Yeah.
You do it highly algorithmically with a lot of computer processing.
And I can tell you it's very expensive, by the way.
Yeah. But this is the kind of thing where we hear in a national security context, we hear it in the law enforcement context. The information didn't get correlated quickly enough. Is there something that what do government agencies have to do to catch up to the speed with which electronic transactions need to happen?
Well, I think the first part of that is easy. They've got to stop trying to do it themselves. It's having gone through this and almost died at some point, because it gets expensive when money's at stake, right? It's hard to build what we've built. It's hard to do that proofing. And so I can't imagine 20 other entities, let alone government entities, trying to redo that for 20 different types of activities. Right, so partnering as opposed to trying to do it yourself is really important here. And not just with us, but with anyone that does something that you want to do in government. Build off of it, right? We're in the world of platforms now. So don't try to do it yourself. It's enormously expensive, and you have to figure out a way to pay for it. And in government, that means most of the time extra taxes. As opposed to in private enterprise, we pay for it by having a business of doing it. So we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to continue to do it extremely well. So not trying to do it yourself, leverage others that are there. And then third, Ellen was up here a little bit earlier and gave a scorecard and talked about government not moving fast enough. I love her approach. I completely agree. It's about, maybe it's opening up what you have as well, opening up in government what you have and letting others build off of it, letting others do those services, because they'll move more quickly, especially if there is an opportunity to make money in the process. And then we share the cost. Then you align on principles. You align on making sure the consumer is getting what they want out of it, making sure that that the partners that you have share those principles. But I think that's how we move faster. It's really hard for me to see that we'll get to where we need to. Consumers demanding a lot more government services online. If it's just government trying to do it themselves, trying to pay for it with taxes, and not allowing innovative companies to help.
It's hard for me to imagine, say, the FBI saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to outsource a lot of our identity sort of tracking to." To PayPal. I mean, is there something? I mean, in some cases we might say, "Oh yeah, we could figure out a partnership with certain kinds of agencies." But don't you think there's some need for government to maybe build some of these services themselves?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't start with the FBI. I'd start with what consumers are asking for.
Yeah.
Great examples are healthcare. We keep talking about healthcare and records not being shared between doctors, right? And I hate going to the doctor and having to retype my medical history each time. I should be able to just share it.
Retype, you mean fill out a paper form, rewrite.
Someone gets it wrong, right?
Right.
And doctors want the same thing. Or going to the DMV and still finding 2-hour lines to get something simple done as opposed to do it online. Yeah. These things should be doable online. They would save government lots of money, and consumers would be much happier for it. So I would start with the things that consumers are asking for. I would also, back to, we were talking about this last week. I'd love to show up at the county clerk to pay my parking ticket right there. Or you know what? Pay it when I get pulled over. Yes, I did it. I'm sorry I was speeding. Here's my ticket, right? So there's a lot of efficiencies we can bring to government just by doing what consumers are asking for. And there are a lot of companies out there. I come from Silicon Valley. There's a higher proportion of them that are willing to do these things, and consumers are willing to pay for the convenience.
Yeah. So if you had one, starting point for you, to say work more closely with government, what would it be?
This is a harder question because we're having to move at the pace of government. We're talking to 3 or 4 different agencies about really big problems that we want to solve, and we're waiting for those conversations to progress fast enough. The GSA is a great example, the NIH and National Cancer Institute in collaborative research or sharing of medical records. So I love all of those examples. But as we do in Silicon Valley, we always say, let's start with the easier things and move from there. Parking tickets be a great one for me. And that's DMV, being able to do the registration
these are state
online.
And local level, yeah.
Yeah, state and local. The DMV is another one. Our DMV in California is now open only 4 days a week because of the budget crunch, right? And those days feel like half days, and when you go, they're even more packed. I'd love to do some of the registration stuff online. I'd love to do some of the renewal stuff online.
Can you talk just real quickly before we run out of time? You mentioned earlier how much is moving towards devices. What's your vision of the future? I think we're really, it's ironic because, of course, the web was so cutting edge. And now, in some ways, the web is the legacy technology. Yeah. And at the same time, the back end of the web is what's powering mobile devices. Mm-hmm. So clearly, the website is sort of passé, but the big web back end, the service that like what PayPal has or Google has or the like, is driving mobile as well. Talk to us a little bit about your vision of the mobile.
Well, it starts with people don't necessarily realize this, but PayPal is a wallet. It's not really another alternative to Visa or MasterCard. Half of our transactions are credit cards, and that's good. And the other half is bank accounts and balance. So, we have 3 different types of payment methods in there. We will push really hard on the identity piece, and identity is another component of your wallet. Now what devices do that is really amazing is it's as opposed to the old web world of going into a room into your house and going online, you're now always online. You carry the internet with you. And it's intelligent with new location data and other real-time aspects of information that allow you to take that internet into the real world. And for us, that's the wallet into the real world. And you always have every payment method with you. You always have all of the relevant, some wallets are really gigantic with receipts and gift cards, and so the virtual wallet can actually accommodate a lot more of that information. And it's intelligent enough that, it's back to about security, convenience, and value. Security in that you only share the information you want to with the right people. Convenience is about sometimes payments, but sometimes sharing your information in the real world. Sometimes it's to make a process much faster or skip a line or fill out a medical form, at a doctor's office. On a tangent there for a second, I saw an article that UCI, University of California, Irvine, is handing out all their medical students iPads.
Yeah.
All their curriculum on iPads. Those are the doctors of the future. So I can imagine arriving at the doctor's office, getting an iPad, and transferring my information from my wallet with a bump. I bump the two devices together, and it's filled out. I adjust the changes, and I get convenience not just in the payment part of it. The payment goes, and I don't have to worry about does the doctor accept credit cards or not. I can use my bank account, and I filled out the whole form, and I can also use it to approve. When another doctor or a specialist wants that information from my physician, from my primary physician, I could just approve it real time in my wallet. So lots of really great examples.
That's a fantastic vision of the future. We're out of time, but hopefully we've given people a taste of what's possible.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thanks
nice
a lot for
again.
coming. Thank you.